What's going on, creators? Yeah, I just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I'd like to talk a little bit about mental diets again. I mean, this is kind of like a broken record here because it's just like the same process every time. Whenever you're getting triggered or and whatnot, it's like kind of address what's going on and also kind of looking within and seeing the story that you're telling yourself about whatever's happening. Yeah, and then either change it, revise it, or just let it go. And sometimes letting it go maybe seems like an enormous burden, especially when it's like a story you've been telling yourself since maybe childhood or adolescence, teenage years, any of these types of things that you feel like you really got a handle on it and you really know what's going on. It makes it kind of difficult to just to let it go and drop it, especially, if you're looking around kind of what's going on with all the COVID shit and everything else. And it's like, if you have these stories that you've been telling yourselves about they and, how they're controlling everything, including you, and you're such a victim, you got to really look at the oneness of everything and realize that the people that are plotting and scheming, they're only doing it to themselves, and they've already lost, once you kind of see it from that perspective and see how it's just a sinking ship that they're just grabbing a hold, trying to get as many people to kind of jump on board this sinking ship as possible. You realize that it's through people's free will choice to either start really just being a slave to this external world, which we all were that. We're all in this like automaton type of program vibe, where it's just, oh well, society says this and your parents say that, and some expert says this, and it was it's always some outside force. You're just kind of just going along with, and then eventually you get to a point where it's just like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? It's like it's going against my inner guidance system. When you start like feeling it internally of like, man, this sucks. I don't want to be involved in maybe the place I'm working. Maybe it feels unethical. I sold receipt paper for about a year, and there was always this kind of weird vibe with me when I was doing, besides it feeling like The Office, it was very similar to that sitcom or TV show, whatever you want to call it, but like, it was always this vibe, I kind of felt where it's like, cutting trees down and selling paper. I don't know why that bothered me as much as it did, but it did, and like, now it's a totally different life situation where I don't have a boss, don't have I guess my customers are kind of like my boss, on some weird kind of way, but, I don't have, in that regards, someone saying, oh, you need to be here at this particular time to do this, and oh, I need you to go get some shots, I need you to go prove some shit and get some documentation for whatever thing. But I'm around people where that's the reality, it's not my reality, but I feel on some level bad for them. But then on the other end of it too, it's just like, I can quit that fucking job. Like in my area, the amount of places hiring is ridiculous. It's like every place in town is hiring, and it's to the point where as long as you show up, a lot of these factories and stuff will just be like, here you go, here's a job. You don't even need to not be high in stone when you get here. As long as you get here at 7 o'clock and can function to some degree, there you go, you're in. And like and it's just unbelievable the amount of openings. But people have this misperception. I don't know why. Maybe it's just whatever story they're telling themselves about being replaceable and everything else. And it's something I thought when I was an employee. It's like, oh, I just be replaced easily and everything like that. But as someone who is employing people now, through my business, it's like, that is so far from reality. It's like, so many of these businesses that are just going along with this outside force, this fear, and like reacting and making policies based on fear. They're destroying themselves. They're losing their good employees. They're just going to quit, because there's plenty of other employers that didn't go along with the noise and oh, let's let the government take care of me. That should be a lesson. Do not depend on man to take care of you. Depend on God to take care of you. and realize, and I understand how backwards that sounds to the world, but it's like, if you actually get into like the quantum science and the real science, I would say, I mean real, but like some of the shit that for whatever reason the materialist paradigm of reality, which is provably not real. You look at Tom Campbell's big toe theory, which is a unified field theory that connects the science of the big and the small, and about the only way to do that is through a simulation theory, which all of this shit that gets tossed in your face is theory, and so much of like mainstream materialistic science, is just dogma at this point. It's fantasy. It's outdated paradigm that is going to be replaced, because when you actually start testing the consciousness out for yourself, listen to what Jesus had to say, honestly, because so much of religion has just turned a good high level awake, hey, this is what's going on. The kingdom of God's within you, and everything that Jesus was saying, you can test for yourself. And he said, "Ask, believe, receive, and it's yours." You can start testing that shit right now in your own life. And you don't need some expert out here when you do it for yourself. And I really encourage you to start doing it for yourself, because the outside force that's ultimately just causing people to destroy themselves, it's already lost. So, but as long as you're following that Pied Piper, down, the path of maybe the egoic consciousness is maybe a less triggering way to describe that for some folks. But it's a observable phenomena. It's something that you can see. It's almost like the Yanny and Laurel situation, where it's just like there's objective audio playing, but how people are hearing it, interacting with it is totally different, and it's becoming more and more manifest just in maybe mainstream culture. If you start dipping into that, not to say to completely unplug and do that. It doesn't hurt, especially for your mental diet. But if you're able to look at different things without being super triggered and having, because there's the two forces, one is, to help you discover who you are, and the other one is ultimately trying to make you forget who you are. And on top of that, there is a oneness, a uniqueness, a connectedness of all things, that you start to experientially start to know. I mean, it's to the point where it's like, you almost get to this thing with the world where it's almost like it's trying to convince you that you spell your name differently. It's like, no, dude, I spell my name like with a K. It's not with a C. It's always been a K. But then the outside world will say, no, that's not true. It's almost like trying to convince you that that you have that 2 + 2 = 5. It's constantly trying to make you question your own self, question your own inner guidance system. And as soon as you just reject that shit, it's like, you know what, thanks for the offer, but I don't need your help. I don't want your help, and I don't need you to lead me down whatever path. I don't need this shit. And, when you really break away from that, there is a fear barrier, but on the other side of that fear, as you grow your faith, is ultimately where you discover, that what you were fearing was an illusion. Ultimately there's so many, I just listened to a guy today, he was like somewhat like, I don't say triggered, but he, and this boils down to labels and how we're defining things. We're illusion, it's like, we all have different definitions for words. Language in itself is pretty, it's not as cut and dry as we've been taught. Part of that has to do with, we assume it's like, oh, you understand English, that we're operating under the same definitions of things, but part of the the attack on reality, part of like the inversion is to start fucking with the definitions of words, so it's like, oh, all of a sudden you could be taught your whole life that this word is whatever, and then come to find out, oh, now you're a racist for even saying that. It's like, what? It's like, how did that come to be? And then it's like, well, what do you mean by racist? It's like like Ku Klux Klan racist, you know, like against black people, you know, or like there's some. It's like, what do you mean by that? You know, it's like people just, and maybe as like you know, from my perspective, it's like I grew up like not really you know, thinking race was all that big of a deal. I mean, like where I'm from, like my parents, you know, like kind of taught me not to like judge people like that. You know, so it's like I don't really. I don't really think about, you know, things like that. But at the same time, you know, being like Italian, I don't know how people perceive me. If they see me as like a white dude or like a Mexican dude or what, you know, because there's been plenty of times where, like when I was like working in factories and stuff, there was like, I don't know, they'd almost like, I worked at this one gas tank factory, you know, and like, I don't know what the deal was, but I always clumped me with like the Mexicans like loading the tanks on the shelves at the end of the line, which was like kind of the bitch job, you know. It was like heavy, you know, and it's like constantly you got to pick the damn thing up and stick it on a shelf and like slide it in there. When all the other jobs, you know, you'd have it at a machine that basically did the hard work for you. And like there's like one machine where you'd flip it around and you'd attach tubes and shit, and you'd flip it back around, you push some buttons and it goes down. You know, so you know, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know how people even perceive. You know, I was like talking to Work One when I was trying to find some help, you know, find some employees and whatnot. As the government unemployment agency, you know, they're asking me if I was a minority-owned business. It's like, I don't know what that means anymore. You know, it's like, what do you mean by that? I feel like that's a racist thing to even ask me. It's like, you know, am I part of your little club, or like I'm like excluded? But you know, who knows how much that could be triggering somebody screaming at the computer screen, you know. But like you know, part of this whole thing though too is to not just keep going along with nonsense, you know, because like I was telling like the lady at work one, it's like, I don't know what that means, and it's like and I don't even like to even identify like that. I mean, like I feel like that's part of the problem is you're creating these. So you know, so what if I was? Does that mean you're gonna find me better help? You know, what does that mean? You know, or is it just some statistics and data, you know, which it seems like, you know, people love to collect all this data, you know, for what? You know, it's mountains and mountains and piles of statistics has gotten us where, you know, it's so funny, you know, with like all this COVID shit and everything else. And it's just like, you know, what, oh, look at the cases, look at this. And it's like, what does that do for you? You know, it's doing nothing but making people feel like they're in control of something they're not in control of. You know, besides, you know, you could be in control of your body, you know, exercising, taking care of yourself. You know, as far as like, you know, any of that kind of shit's concerned, it's like, trust that inner guidance system to tell you what to do. I mean, it's, you know, stop listening to this outer, especially on TV. I mean, it's just this million, you know, that's millions and millions of dollars of just propaganda that's taxpayer, you know, I guess, you know, who knows anymore. It just seems like is part of the illusion, the hologram at this point. You know, it's just, you got these like different like reality throttles on limiters, you know. It's like that hold people to a certain level of consciousness, and then just by your own choice to stay at these levels. I mean, you can transcend these levels easy enough as soon as you start to recognize the game, you know, and recognize that there's a force that feeds off of fear, that energy that's created from that, you know, where love is expansive and, you know, giving and all this kind of shit. You know, fear is constraining and it needs to eat. You know, there's no energy in itself, you know, so it's like it's got to take it to function, you know, whereas like love, the energy is from within, and it's unlimited because it's coming from God ultimately, you know, where, you know, the illusion of separation, you know, you're chasing illusions outside of yourself for your joy, your fulfillment, all these, your safety, all this shit that doesn't actually do anything. You know, it's funny to me, you know, like how many people just worship government and just worship these experts, and, you know, because of that they're just suffering. Not my fault, you know, that's on whoever just wants to just make, you know, Fauci their god, or the government their god, or the CDC, you know, any of these places. There's like, oh, let me just vacate my body and my mind and just be an automaton. And that's part of like the waking up process, waking up from the dream of the automaton, but like, and not to sit there and like, part of like judging, is like, for people that like biblically get into, what judging means, it is condemning, judging and condemning in the King James Version. You can look it up for yourself in the concordance, these two words, but judging and condemning are used interchangeably. That's that same word, so, condemning others is like different than using discernment of like, oh, that's not who I am. So much of like the duality that exists, is to define your own, who you actually are. The realization of self, I guess, is one way to label things, but that could have so much baggage and shit on it too. I mean, it's like it gets to a point of just exploring consciousness where it's like these labels almost become pointless unless you're dealing with people that are doing it too, because then it's like, oh, I get what you're saying, but for the some people just waking up to the fact that news isn't real. It's like, motherfucker, this shit has, where were you? And this is like a question I have for most adults, maybe like the ones that are younger and stuff that haven't been, around enough to realize how full of shit the government is, or illusion Hollywood or television media in general is. It's like, where were you when the weapons of mass destruction was going on? Iraq, Afghanistan. Wasn't that enough to make you go, what the fuck is going on? Building 7, that doesn't make any sense. It's like there's been this track record for 20 years of just nonstop lies, deception, followed by, oh, well, this time we're the arbiter of truth. We know what's going on. And you start to realize the same patterns, the same propaganda techniques, the same division, and things have gotten so absurd, where it's just like, hey, how radical can you make a headline to get somebody's attention? Which is all this game is. It's all psychological, and it's all about your attention, because your consciousness really starts to shape the paradigm of reality that you're living in. And people that are at the top levels of things, they know that as well. It's just common knowledge, for anybody that's actually practicing metaphysics and shit like that. And this shit has been going on. I mean, this isn't like, oh, with the double slit experiment, they figured this shit out. It's like who do Jesus was going on when Jesus was here. It's just like, it's been going on, and that's the kind of the crazy part about this time in the story. It's like waking up to that en masse. There's so many people waking up to the deceptions, because it's like every time they make a move, it backfires, and it's like, and in that backfiring, it affects them. And it's like the more they try to control others, the more they're being controlled. It's like this downward spiral, and they don't see it, but it's because we're all connected. So, part of being in the illusion of separation is suffering and torment, and it's all self-created. And so part of letting go of the old man is recognizing what's happening in these in the present moment, and realizing that so much of your life is the past confronting you in the present moment. And so this future that you might be desiring is already there once you let go of the programming and mindsets that have created this drama that's unfolding in the present. Because things work more quantumly, and if people don't want to believe that, that's fine. Even though you can test it for yourself, it's the same thing of like, well, go research it for yourself and be like, no, I don't want to hear what you're saying. I'm going to run away from you and hide, or just get violently triggered and just start screaming like an infant with historical facts. It's like, okay, well, if you want to destroy yourself, then instead of just taking 5 minutes to question your own cognitive dissonance, that's on you. It's like some people might only be incarnating in this experience just to suffer. Who knows? That's beyond me at this point to even know or care. All I do really care about is for the ones that are like awake, or awakening in this process, to try to, on some level, just share where I'm coming from, provide my little puzzle piece in this thing, and people can do with it what they will. But I just want to get on here and kind of share that with you guys, kind of share that perspective. I don't know if I was even really sharing anything, but other than just kind of rambling, and I kind of like listening to people ramble. So, maybe just do that. And then just to remind and kind of put it back on you guys' radar too, say no to things, listen to your inner guidances, and not be afraid if you get fired or quit your job because of just bullshit, tyrannical, fear-based policies. There's plenty of jobs, and you can be, and God's your provider, and so you don't got to keep worrying about these things, and yeah, fuck it, who cares? But with that, thanks for listening, everybody, and have a good rest of your now, and God bless.